Welcome to the On Record podcast, a podcast where we talk with professionals and subject matter experts from diverse markets that are using and providing video and audio systems in innovative ways to support their organization's objectives. My name is Mike Anzalone, and my co-host is Andy Simmons. Today, our guest is Kevin Marti. Kevin is the founder, president, and CEO of Intelligent Video Solutions. Welcome, Kevin.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Kevin, Mike, and I obviously are very familiar with you, and we know your backstory, but for our listeners, why don't you give us just like a kind of a 5-minute, who is Kevin Marti, and how did we kind of get here today?
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity to talk with you guys. I've been president and CEO of IVS since 2013. Kind of been in the video industry since 1995, so it's been a while, seen a lot of different things throughout my career, and yeah, looking forward to our discussion today.
Kevin, out of the years that you've been in video, can you give us some examples for our listeners on how some of your clients have used video in innovative ways?
Sure. You know, what's interesting about video is that it's changed so much over the years, right? I mean, when we first got started, we were talking about analog and VHS and things like that. But with our customers, they're primarily using video for what we call 3 different use cases. And we term those training, research, and evidence. So in a lot of cases, what they're using video for is some hands-on training skill. They're trying to teach a student a specific skill. So they're using video to not only record those sessions, but actually observe the students while they're doing it. And then what they do is they do a debrief process, typically with the students, and so that the student can do a better job at that skill. The other thing that video is being used for is on the research side. So in there, you're doing a lot more observation, and you're going back and doing what they call coding. So they're bringing in different participants, recording those, and then doing comparisons over time as far as how a treatment is actually working with a patient or clients. And then the last need that we actually serve is on the evidence side of things, and that's more for just interview archiving for evidentiary purposes.
Sounds like you got a variety of different types of clients. Can you tell us a little bit about the specific markets that you work in?
Our core markets are higher education, healthcare, and government. And, you know, in each one of those spaces, there's, as I mentioned, there's use cases. So in the higher ed, we do quite a bit of clinical work, as well as in the medical simulation space. So in the clinical space, it's people like psychologists, counselors, speech therapists that are teaching students to work in some type of a clinical setting. We're also doing quite a bit of work in the simulation space, which is really, it's a fast-growing market for us. And they're not necessarily working with live patients, but they're working with in a simulated healthcare environment, which is safer and it's more repetitive for students. And it's a growing space because of one of the reasons that there's not enough clinical hours for students. So they're bringing these in-house. In each one of those cases, they're using video to watch that student doing this, you know, performing the skill, recording it, and then doing a debrief afterwards.
So again, I know you've probably seen like hundreds of implementations of kind of those standard deals, some of the ones that you just described.
Yes.
Maybe tell us about some of like the interesting or maybe more niche like use cases that you've seen or heard of, or maybe something that's kind of up and coming in this space.
What's kind of interesting is I think one of the biggest surprises with video is that you never know where it's going to end up and what people are going to dream up, you know?
Sure.
So we've seen it used in like a math lab, you know, where you would think, oh my gosh, how are they going to use video to, you know, study how somebody does math? So it's really quite interesting, and it really depends on the creativity of the users as far as the different diverse ways that people are using video just to make their lives better and to be more effective at what they do.
Yeah, I don't think I can blow right past the math one because that was my degree in college. I majored in math, and a lot of time in the math lab, empty classroom. So do you know how they use it in the math lab?
Yeah, I think that was actually at, I believe it was at Penn State. And there they would have groups of students and they would give them a problem. And then they would actually record how they worked through that problem together. It was more of a research. I was on the research side of space. It wasn't necessarily on the training piece of it, which is why they call it a lab. But yeah, it was very interesting.
So, Kevin, it sounds like you have a wide variety of clients. How do you go about recommending equipment for such diverse use cases?
What's interesting with what the approach that IVS took is that the equipment is pretty standardized. The cameras and audio gear that we put into each one of our customers, that's pretty standard. We almost use the word cookie cutter for that. What's quite different, though, is the use case or the workflow of as far as how they're actually using that video. How they're interacting with their students or the study that they're actually doing. So in that case, what we tried to do is we tried to make the software flexible on the backside of it so that they could actually tweak it to their different workflows that they have. But as far as the equipment, once we understand the audio piece and how many cameras that they're looking in, that they want to have with inside of the room, that's fairly standard. And then it's just a matter of working out their workflows.
That makes a lot of sense the way you said it. Like the equipment is kind of cookie cutter, but the software is what changes and adapts. So talking about like keeping a customer long-term, keeping someone happy for more than, a 3 to 5 year initial contract. How do you make a software sticky and something that they want to continue using and growing with in their organization?
Well, first and foremost, you have to keep improving, the technology so that it's keeping up and it's meeting future needs. And just from an IT infrastructure perspective, software ages out, so you have to make sure that all your core applications that you're using to build the software, they're modern and it's a modern framework. So I think that's first and foremost is that you have to continue to innovate, rebuild the tool set, and then just take a look at, what new things that you can actually do that you haven't been able to do, because quite frankly, when you started with technology, you just weren't able to do it. Like this session, right? If we couldn't have done what we're doing right now in the 90s, right? Even early 2000. You being in one room, at a remote location, me being here at IVS, and Mike being at his home office. We would have had to be physically in the same room because of the transport, what we were using for transport back then. But the technology, when everything went to IP, it enabled us to open things up from a wider perspective. So as new technologies develop, we need to take advantage of those, implement that into the software so that it enables our users to do new things with the software.
We talked a lot with some of our previous guests about balancing being like an early adopter and cutting edge versus waiting to see if a technology is more of a fad. How do you kind of weigh that when you're developing software? Like, should we add this in or should we wait to see like where technology is kind of going? Like, how do you consider what you're going to build for your customers based on kind of like what's available?
First of all, the thing that we take a look at is what are our customers telling us? What are they wanting to do? That's kind of first and foremost. And then, we need to take a look at the tech to see if the tech is available to make it a reliable solution that that is scalable, that works all the time. We don't want to be bleeding edge just due to the fact of that reliability, ease of use for our customers, which is really, really, really critical in this in video space. Video is extremely effective, but one of the challenges has been it's been hard to work with and hard to use on the back side of it, just due to the how it's all put together, right? So we want to continue that to be extremely reliable, easy to use, and adapt those technologies that work.
So as technology becomes more and more powerful and more like integrated into our lives, how do you ensure that it is still something that is easy to use and it's not something that's going to, say, overcomplicate workflows for your customers?
One of the core beliefs that I've always held on to is video is really powerful. Okay. It's really, I mean, when you think about the information that is shared, the amount of, information that is gathered, and it's a really powerful tool. However, if it's hard to use and hard to get at, people just don't use it. So that's where that ease of use is pretty critical. I mean, if you build a feature, but it's really hard to get at, users just they're not gonna enable it.
Mhm.
It's no different than Word and Excel, the basic applications that we use every day from from a user perspective. There's tons and tons of features back there, but how many of them do we actually use? And if they're fairly simple to use, though, like spell check. When spell check originally came out, you kind of had to go in and enable it and everything like that. Now it just works, right? Word will actually tell you, hey, you typed an incorrect word, and it'll suggest a new word.
Not even just that, like one minor difference, like spell check, you used to have to push a button to run spell check. And it was
Right,
one
right.
click. Now it does it automatically. And it's like a world of simplicity.
Yep. And so if you create these features that are cool, but the users they can't really use them because of complexity, that in itself isn't great either, due to the fact that you've just complicated your entire system.
Sure. And I think really, if you look back to like the release of like the iPad and like maybe like what, 08, 09, their big thing was you already know how to use it. Right.
Yeah.
And after that, like that was kind of the big push in technology, wasn't it? Like, I want to know how to use this right off the bat.
Right. One of the things that I've always said about video was that, when we started, one of our first use cases was in the law enforcement area. And if you talk to a cop, they will tell you that you need to make it cop proof. Cop proof is, so, you put a big red button on there. And so it's just, it's extremely so intuitive that, and nobody can really mess it up. And, one of the things that I like to say is that it should be as easy as turning on and off the water. It should be that intuitive.
Let's talk about like when it's not intuitive. Like what are some of the, like in your career and working in this field, what are some of the challenges you had to overcome and like some of the lessons learned from there? Anything that you might be able to help someone in a similar situation to you, or maybe some of our customers, like, overcome some of those hurdles that you've come across in your career?
As I take a look back at video, I mean, one of the core problems has always been transport. Prior to IP video, what did we use to transport video? It was a coax cable. So getting video from one location to another and, allowing multiple people to see it at ease and being reliable, that's a really, really, really big deal. And so as transport has improved, what that does is it opens up access for more and more applications. And then, what goes with transport is storage. Traditionally, video has been big, and you needed tape originally, right? And so because it's tons and tons of information. So the better we get at some of those things, it just enables us to do more things with it.
So how about if we kind of, jump to now, not necessarily like products you're looking to build or anything, but what are the challenges that are currently on your mind that you think like, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, the industry will have to kind of find solutions for?
I think the biggest one, which we've been chasing for a long, long time, and it's for why we have our namesake, intelligent video solution, was search. And with video and making it extremely interactive, getting to the content that you want to see extremely easily. I think that's been a battle that we've been really chasing for quite a while. Because when you think about video, it's typically linear. There's a beginning and the end. Even as you guys roll out this podcast, right? There's going to be sections within inside it that are more applicable to people. Well, how do you make that searchable? How do you make it so that it's discoverable and for people to just get at that exact piece of information that they want to consume? So I think we can get a lot better, especially as AI gets more and more powerful, that where the AI can ingest the video and it can allow users to get exactly to the content that they want to see.
That's probably a good callback to like the question I asked a couple of minutes ago in regards to like early adopter versus kind of waiting and seeing where the technology goes, right? Like, had you been thinking about AI just a couple of years ago, we didn't know that much about it. Now, in the last just 2 years, the world has changed a lot. Now you start to see a little bit more what's possible.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, it was we were doing manual AI, right? we originally called those markers. So you would have to put in the comments and the information that a user would look up so that they could get to exactly to that point. But in the future, and even now, we're doing transcription on the fly, and then we're putting that into a database, and that's completely searchable. That feature wasn't available a couple of years just due to the accuracy of transcription. So as transcription has really, really improved in the last 5 years, that feature just gets a lot easier, and it's become more reliable at the same time.
Manual AI, that's a term I've never thought of.
Well, that's a Kevin term.
How about, so, we talked about where you see like challenges you might see in the next 5 to 10 years or so. How about just like, we talked some about the markets that IVS works with and maybe some of the different use cases that you have seen. Anything that you see on the horizon where it's like, you know what, I bet in the next, again, 5 to 10 years or so, we might see more need for video in this industry, or anything that you ever look at that doesn't currently use technology?
One of the things that I've talked with people about is that one of the limiting factors I'm getting kind of vertical now when I'm talking about our space, right? If you take a look at the entire universe, I mean, there's video is very, very big, but in our smaller space, one of the things that's limiting our people to do work with more students, train more students, is just on the pure evaluation side, and again, this gets down to the fact that video is big, right? So, they record a session and then they got to go back and review that session, and then evaluate that student. That's cumbersome, in order to do that. And quite frankly, if you think about it, other than being able to jump to the spot with inside of the video, maybe where that student was doing a specific skill with a mouse, versus using the fast forward button on your VHS player, it's kind of the same. But with AI and the ability to maybe have AI do some of the evaluations to speed up that process, I think that can be a very, very exciting space with inside of the education world, and even in the research world, quite frankly, where instead of having a person have to sit down and go through this mounds and mounds of data, you're going to have the AI engine go through it, and it'll just automatically do the scoring and automatically do the evaluation. Now, with that said, the technology just isn't there yet because of accuracy. And when we go to these shows, and the instructors say that there's but they are all talking about it.
In your experience, what's the difference between a good video system and a truly exceptional one that drives meaningful outcomes?
Great question. I go back to what I was talking about earlier. Ease of use, reliability, always on, and that really comes down to trust, which is a basic human need. If you don't trust something, it's not going to be used to its fullest extent. So you really have to be able to trust that the video system is going to work, that there's no user issues, there's not a lot of training involved. There's not a lot of things that can go wrong with it. So as technology matures, as we can continue to make this simpler, not only from a UI design, but a components design, so that we don't have as much hardware involved, so that we can increase that reliability. I think that is really, in my opinion, one of the big differences between something that's good. Let's face it, you can create there's a lot of different video systems out there. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to create video. There just is, but the great ones allow you to use it without even thinking about it.
So it sounds like you've really thought about the human element a lot when you design VALT.
For me, that's 100% what I've thought about, over my career. And I think some of the drivers was that I hate to say how old I am, but just remembering the technology and, how that was bolted together, and then how powerful it was, but how difficult it was actually, and costly it was to enable it, to be used. And that was the limiting fact. We've always been able to have a camera and be able to watch that remotely somewhere and record it. But, the limiting factor was the human side. It's like, how easy was it for me to do that? And how feasible was it to do that? And what was the cost involved, as well? Getting back to our session here, how feasible would have it been for you guys to be in two different locations, me being in a different location, and for us, we would have had to use some video conferencing product. We would have had to have some switchers involved. We would have had a broadcast studio, tons and tons of gear, and a lot of support people. Versus now, Andy came, put a camera on my monitor and a microphone on my desk, and here we are. Did that answer the question on the human side?
Yes, it did. Yep. Because it's a question that I know a lot of our guests have been expressing. There's the technology, and the technology is moving very rapidly and evolving quickly. But is it evolving? Is it changing in order to keep up with that human element? So I think it's an important concept. I think that as individuals are using video, using the software, like you've emphasized today, it needs to be easy to use. Because if it's not easy to use, it won't be used. And therefore, what value is the technology? What value is the investment if it's just really just too hard to use to accomplish what their objectives are?
Yeah, I don't know if this is an accurate saying, but you have to remove the technology from the technology, so that the user can just have the experience. Because the user, at the end of the day, they're not interested in the technology. They want to have the experience. They want to do something and be more productive. They want to make somebody's life better. They really could care less what type of camera that's being used, where it's being recorded, what type of network it's on, etc. They just need it to work.
Sure, the goal is not to use the technology; it's to get some sort of result.
Right.
So that's interesting. Then, how do you, as a business owner, like we talk to IT professionals and we talk to end users about like how they measure success in this field. IT professionals, they said a lot of like, okay, did people actually adopt the technology that we purchased and implemented? And the end users talked about like student results. So how do you, as a business owner, analyze if when you implemented a customer and they used it for a while, that it was successful?
If they expand, quite frankly, the litmus test is, if they like the experience, they're going to find other places for it. That's one of the cool things with video, is that there's never a shortage of ways that it can be used, right? as long as what you put in works. And so you brought up a really good point. You've talked to IT people and you've talked to end users. At IVS, we have two different customers. We have the IT side and we have the end user side. Very different. I mean, they're very, very different people, right? And what their, quote, needs are. The IT people, they want it to play well with their network. They want it to be manageable. They want it to be scalable. They want it to be secure. And on the user side, they're looking at how easily can I log into my system? How, can I watch somebody doing something? Can I provide feedback to them? Can I find the video that I actually recorded? So there, it's more on just the pure user experience and their workflow as far as getting their work done.
That's interesting. So when we talked about like how you develop, you said you wanted, ease of use to be right there, but you also need to go with the technology. So you're thinking of both of those customers as you're developing.
Right. When we sit down and we go through our I call them like development workshops, like where are we going to go in the next 6 months? There's always, and you have to balance this. There's always what are the IT people asking for? Do they want better SSO integration? Do they want more rights management? Do they want it to be able to play on their SaaS platform better? Versus, a user environment, do we incorporate some type of a draw feature so that they can provide additional feedback, to the user? Do we build something out like an ASCII feature for medical students in their exams? So we have those two different camps, and what we try to do with each development cycle is hit the highest requested items for each one of those for the groups, so that we're providing additional value for our customers. And getting back to what you originally asked, like, well, how do you measure satisfaction? I mean, if they're happy with VALT and we're doing a good job and we're continuing to innovate and continuously improve, they're gonna find new uses for VALT.
So, Kevin, as we wrap up our session today, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I would just say be creative, and really, really think about how you can use video more, with inside of what you're doing. And because as you enable it, you're going to see more powerful results that are going to come forward. So don't put yourself in a box with the technology. Think creatively, not just do what you've done in the past, but think about, hey, can I do this? And we love those type of questions, because that's what actually spurs development, right? It's like, okay, hey, I would really like a camera that would roll around on a cart. And, so we never thought that somebody would, want a cart that, has a camera on it that you can just move from place to place. But as users got creative, and they were asking for it. So that's what I would say. Get creative, think out of the box, and it'll be amazed to see what is possible.
If anybody who's listening to this podcast wanted to get in touch with you, either questions on something you said or, questions on the products that you put out there, what's the best way for someone to do that?
I have a LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I don't check it regularly, but feel free to link up with me. You can always email me at kmarti@ipivs.com. You could also send it to sales@ipivs.com. And I'd be happy to love to floor those questions. It's kind of funny when you become president, nobody talks to you anymore. So would love to get those questions.
Well, thank you. We've been speaking with Kevin Marti, founder, president, and CEO of Intelligent Video Solutions. Thank you for your time today, Kevin.
Thanks, you guys. It was a great conversation. Have a great week.
All right. Take care.
On Record is a podcast presented by Intelligent Video Solutions, hosted by Mike Anzalone and Andy Simmons, and produced by Kyle Shellstad. Find us online at ipivs.com/onrecord and on social media at Intelligent Video Solutions.